Hello, my name is Mark Sommerfeld. Today we're going to show you how we're going to assemble your new extruded aluminum table and also the fence, and we're going to show you how it operates. After we get that done, we're going to come in here and we're going to show you how to build this nice cabinet to set your table on. So we're going to get started here. Okay, here's your three parts to your router tabletop, and we're going to assemble them now. The middle section, when you do this, you want to put the good side down. And you can see right here where we're going to have a tongue and groove where they're going to lock together, right like that. Okay? And with your hardware package, take your bolt and lock washer right here like this. Bolt comes from the inside, and then your nut comes in here. Take your wrench, make sure your ends are flush, and we'll start tightening these down. You got 6 of these to do now. So we'll start tightening all those down. Okay, we got that secured with our 1-inch bolts, lock washers, and nuts. Now, before we flip this top over, we're going to put our fence brackets on. We have 2 types of fence brackets. One has the 4 holes, and the other one has the 3 holes. What you want to do is take a 1/2-inch bolt with the weld nut and come down through the top and put those 4 weld nuts on here. Right like this. You can see how they're going down through the top. Okay, we have one here ready to go. What we're going to do is take those 4 weld nuts and line them up into our grooves on the bottom of our top and slide them right in. Okay, once you have your fence bracket in there, she's flush on the front, we'll take and we'll tighten down those bolts and those weld nuts, right like that. And we want to be all flush in the front there with the front of our table. And we've done the same thing with the back. We've got the fence bracket on the back. Now, the next thing we want to do is put this fence bracket on. And again, you can see we've got the 1/2-inch bolts and the weld nuts. These weld nuts right here are going to slide into this track going this way. So we'll bring it around here, slide it in this way. Okay, we've got that bracket put in, and it's very important to keep this tabletop down so everything's flush on the top. We've got that one done. We've got the back one kind of loosely put in, but before we tighten up this back one back here, the other bracket back here, you want to make sure that you take a series of bolts and slide 2 bolts in each one of these tracks. One here, here. There's 4 tracks underneath here. And what these bolts are going to be used for down the road is to attach your router table top to your cabinet. Okay? So make sure those are inserted in before you put your last bracket system on. Okay, we've got these fence brackets on. The front ones are already on. The next thing we're going to do is what you want to do is make a temporary piece of plywood to cover the opening on us. And the dimensions are in our instructions, 27 inches by 31.5. And you can just take a piece of plywood like this and drill the holes in it for your cabinet, for your temporary cabinet, or down the road, if some of these guys like to put this tabletop into their fence system on their Here's the nice thing about our system right here. This is what I enjoy. And this is, remember where that bent wrench comes into play? This bent wrench really works nice. We're going to take our 0 insert out here. To change bits now, I don't want to crank that bit all the way up where it's easy to do it. I'm going to push my left hand in on the spindle lock, okay? Once that's locked in, right there, all it takes is nudging that bit comes out, and the tongue bit will come in. Drop it on our rubber grommet, snug it up, and we're ready to go. That quick. Now we put our 0 clearance ring in again. Tighten the ring there. She locks in. Our fence comes over to our pivot point. Now, if you want to be careful with this pivot point, it all depends. If you start scratching that, you're going to scratch your table. If you don't care, you can, but otherwise you can be careful. There's our bearing. Pivot our fence, flush with that bearing, lock it down. We're ready to cut our tongues. we're going to take this small piece right here, and right here is this piece. It's going to go right into here. We want this to be flush. So this is our good side. We're going to always put the good side down. You'll find out with my system, every bit we do, the good side is always down. So we're going to put the good side down there and run that through. Right like this. Okay, and you can see there's our tongue. Because of that easy set, we're already offset about 1/8 of an inch. That tongue now automatically will come in and correspond with this groove, right like that, snaps in, and you can see we are dead flush right there. Perfectly flush. So that's the unique thing about this tongue and groove system. It's not only strong, but it is very accurate, as you can see. Plus you got a lot stronger joint there with that tongue and groove. So what we're going to do is cut all the grooves now behind the members in our face frame, and then we'll be ready to assemble that face frame. Okay. Okay, we've got all the grooves for our face frame cut where they need to be. Now we're going to start assembling that entire face frame. Okay, we've just finished assembling that entire face frame. We cut the grooves where they're supposed to go, the two outside ones. We cut these two here on the inside. Why? Because when we put our drawer slides in here, we want this member to be flush with the inside of our drawer. Same thing here. We put one here and here for that side partition, for that drawer slide. Here we're going to have to build out, you'll see later on. Here and here we put them towards the top. There we put them towards the top too. Okay, our entire face frame is built. We're a good start on building the rest of the cabinet. What we got to do now is build the two sides. Now you can use plain 3/4 inch plywood, or you can make some nice fancy raised panels like we have here, and that's what I would suggest doing. So we're going to make the raised panels for the two sides next. Okay, here's our face frame, and here's our side panel right here. This is one of our side panels. And the instructions will tell you how big to make your cut list. There's a cut list. Here's your style, here's your other style, here's your middle style. You got a top bottom rail and a top rail. And it also tells you exactly how big to cut the two raised panels that fit inside there. Now, I'm not going to cover how to cut the cope and the pattern and the raised panel. In our raised panel DVD, it shows you how to build a raised panel. Okay, so we've built the raised panel and we've glued it up. Okay, then what I do is after it's glued up, I'll take and cut the tongues on the two ends. Some guys will like to cut those ahead of time. You know, if you cut them ahead of time, when you go to glue this up, make sure you cut two little scraps with grooves in them so that you can take them onto here. Now when you clamp up your raised panel like this, when you clamp that up, you're not going to dent your tongues. All right, well, let's put the tongue cutter in and cut the two tongues on that and show you how that's done. Okay, we've got both of our tongues cut on both of our styles. Now we can do the machining for our raised panel, and you can clamp up your raised panel and the tongues will already be cut. Okay, now we'll take that tongue, after you've got your panel glued up, you want to take that tongue, lock it into that groove on the side of your face frame there, and right there's how your side will go together, right like that. Now, the next thing we want to do is we've already got the groove cut in the top of that face frame. We want to cut a groove in the top of this side. And what that's for is for automatically now, when we cut the tongues on our corner blocks, to strengthen that corner, our tongues will go into the grooves, right like that. And we're going to be flush on the top right here too. That's why we're going to cut the groove on the top of our two side panels, and we're going to do that next. And while we're doing that, we'll also have a raised panel on the back of this cabinet. I'll show you what that looks like. But we're going to cut grooves on the top of the sides and a groove on the top of that back panel. So we have a groove all along the top. All right, let's go get that side panel and do the other one. Okay, here's our other side now. We're going to show you how we're going to cut that groove in the top of here. We've put back the groove cutter. What's nice about this, you can jump back and forth from the tongue to the groove anytime just by swapping out them bits, never losing the height. Okay. When you cut that groove, it has to be done after it's assembled. You can see that. A lot of people come into here like this, line it up like this, and cut the groove. The thing is, when you take a groove cutter and you go across the grain, especially in plywood, it's going to chip. You know, there's no way you can get around it. So what we like to do is called climb cut. We'll come in here like this, and we'll turn the router on, and we'll pull that board through like this. It's not going to take off on you because you're not taking much of a cut, just a small 1/4 of an inch. Show you how easy that is to do. Come into here. But what that does, gives you a nice smooth cut, you know. Let's get our chips out of here. You can see. Clean all your chips out, and even going across the grain there, you get a nice smooth cut. Okay, we've got the two sides cut. Now, let's come around here and put this side on here to show you what it looks like. The two sides are cut. Start down at the bottom. Okay, we got that locked in. Let's lock this one in. What I'll do right now is I will actually come into here and clamp this and glue it. What we used to do is pocket screw. That's why we offset that tongue so we could run the pocket screw through there. Some people like to do that. I've gotten away from it. I found out the pocket hole, two things. It's an ugly joint. And number two, it takes a long time to drill all those pocket holes and line them all up and do all this. Where this way, I just throw some clamps on here, 30 minutes, they're dry, and I'm ready to go. So I'm not using the pocket hole in there anymore. I'm just going to take some clamps and glue that. Okay, after we've got those two pieces glued, eventually we're going to end up putting this back on. I'm going to talk about this right now. There's our back raised panel, and again, the panel, the video and the arch raised panels it shows you how to do a raised panel, no problem. But you clamp that up. But right here especially, we want to cut these two grooves here ahead of time. Before you clamp this up, cut these two grooves in your two stiles ahead of time before you clamp that. Otherwise, what you're going to be doing, you can see, is taking this big piece like here and running it through. Okay? So always cut as many joints ahead of time as you can. We cut the groove here, and that right there is going to cut on those tongues, and that's going to form the four sides to our cabinet. Now, we do not want to put this back on yet, because before we put that back on, we want to come into here and put the floor on this piece, the floor on the bottom piece on. and the partitions coming in here next. And to get that, the dimensions in your sheet should show you how to cut them, but I would measure just to make sure. And we'll show you how to do that measuring first. We'll put this cabinet together here. We'll clamp it up, we'll dry clamp it up, and we'll show you how we're going to arrive at those measurements. Okay, we got to find how big our shelves, we got 2 bottom shelves in here, how big they got to be. And I like to use this ruler here, the old time ruler where they extends out. We're going to get a good inside measurement here. From here, extend out right to there. Okay, 29.25. Okay, and these dimensions are covered in the packet, but just to make sure, I'd measure them here. And then from the front to the back, we'll come to the back of our sacrifice piece there, right there. We can get a good inside measurement right there too. Okay, and we know we have to add 1/4 inch to that measurement because that tongue is going to go inside this groove 1/4 inch. Okay, once you arrive at that measurement, which we have right here, okay, there's our piece. It's cut to the right size. What we need to do is cut a tongue on the front so it can receive into that groove. And you can see we've already, again, we've put our tongue cutter back into our router. We're switching them back and forth. No problem, because we're always keeping it at the same height. We're going to cut the tongue now and make sure if this shelf is going to show, you want to put the good side down. Remember, always the good side down. So we'll come into here, turn our router on. Okay, there's our tongue, and there's our good side. That now is going to come right down into here, just right, and that tongue is going to slide into this groove. Except, you can see our tongue goes all the way across the board, doesn't it? And our groove stops shy on the ends. Well, that's where in our set, in our tongue and groove set, that's why we include a little flush trimmer, okay? And that's where we're going to come into here. We have a flush trimmer installed into our router. And we're going to come into here and just buzz off that tongue on the 2 ends so it can bypass that groove. So we'll do that right here. You can see what we're doing right here. Okay, now we've got rid of that tongue, just enough in there, so now we can come into here, and next we're going to line this up and put that in. But before we put that in, we're going to glue and clamp this, okay? How are we going to attach the sides? Well, what we're going to do there, we could put cleats underneath there, but what we're going to do is we're going to drill some pocket holes right here, here, and here. And those pocket hole screws are going to go into this style, into this middle style, and into this back style, right into here. And we can screw that into here. Also, on the back side, we're going to want to put a series of pocket holes to pocket screw into the back. So we'll drill the pocket holes on a piece, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. Okay, we've got all the pocket holes drilled. Now, what I like about this little jig here, this little pocket hole jig, is kind of handy because since it's built in a 2-piece style here, you got uninterrupted workflow. You know, when you got large sheet goods in here, uninterrupted travel right in through here. So it's a nice little handy jig. We use it a lot for different things. Okay, now what we're going to do next is take our two pieces here, our bottom shelf and our middle shelf, and stick them into our cabinet and dry clamp them up. Okay, we've got the pocket holes all drilled. Now we're ready to take and stick that tongue into that groove right here. And what we're doing here is, normally these clamps would be off and everything would be glued, dried, glued, you keep going, but we're just going to dry clamp everything together first and make sure everything fits. We're snugged into that groove, really snug there. What we want to do now is stretch a clamp across the top here. Clamp that. Now, you can see our series of pocket holes. We're clamping the front, okay? But on the sides, we're going into the stiles, the two stiles, and then that middle stile, we're pocket screwing into there too. To make sure this thing is in here square, let's set a square in there and make sure we got this board not going at an angle. We want it square. So I'll come back here and set my square. We're pretty good right there. So what we'll do is load the pockets with screws. And when you're building this, I glue that front edge here, but these pocket holes going into here, it's not necessary really to glue that. You can put a little glue on that plywood if you want to, but once you got this lined up, we'll make sure this side's square. Right there. You can screw your sides in. Okay. Now, once you got that bottom in, that's starting to tie the cabinet together pretty good, and it's squaring it up. So now what we can do is we can bring this cabinet up, and the reason we want to work from the bottom up, we don't want to put this shelf in next because we got some partitions that go inside here for our drawers. When we cut those now, I'll show you how they work. Again, what we did is we'll put a top into here. Put your top into here and measure from the floor up to the top. Okay? Once you get that measurement, that's what this is right here. And everything's the same depth back. We're going to take this onto our router table. We'll cut the two tongues. Okay? But look at this groove. See this groove? It goes here, it stops, and here it stops. Well, again, we take that flush trimmer. And we're going to flush trim this off here, here, and here. So basically what we have here is the old-time biscuits, but we have some large biscuits. Okay? So that now, this piece right here is going to go locking into those grooves right there. Okay? And again, that'll be pretty well set. Now what we can do is clamp and glue that. But to get this thing so it's in here square, right here, get this square, we can drill some pocket holes coming into here and pocket screw it to that floor. So that's what we'll do next. Drill some pocket holes here and on this side to come into this floor. So let's get our pocket hole jig and drill those pocket holes. Okay, we've got our a partition for our two sets of drawers here, all cut to the right size. We've got the pocket hole drilled here, 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 and here. So all we have to do next now is square this thing up, square this up so she's going back square, which she is. Hold her down and drive the screws in. Okay. Now, next thing we're going to do is take this middle partition that we have here, and you can see we have the pocket holes pre-drilled here. The tongue is cut on the front. And we're ready to start and do the same thing all over again. Remember, those pocket holes are going to go into this style, and this style. We don't want pocket holes going into these raised panels because those panels move, they float. So make sure you don't screw into them. Okay, we're going to bring this middle section down. It'll come forward, and we're going to do the same thing all over again that we did on the bottom. Just drive it into that groove, clamp and glue this, get under, turn it upside down, and pocket screw it, and we'll have that middle partition done. Okay, we've got our other side partition here. We're going to put our side partition in. And remember, we cut the tongue so that we'll be flush here. We want to be flush for our drawers here. That's why we put that groove on that side. So we're going to dry clamp that into there. And again, make sure we're square here. Once we are, we got the screws in our pockets. We can drive those screws home. That partition's in. Now, before we want to cut grooves on the top. You can see where I put this brace in here already. I cut a groove here, and then just cut a tongue in a 1x2. And what's going to happen there? That's going to slide into here. And what those are for later on, when our router table comes down on top of here. Remember those bolts at the very beginning we stuck in there? We're going to slide those bolts. And they'll come in there. We want them bolts to slide and come right down here. And that's how we're going to attach that whole router top mechanism to the cabinet. Okay. Last thing we have to do now, you can see we have tongues running down our two stiles here in our grooves. Remember that big raised panel piece we made for the back? We got the two grooves there. We're going to come into here and clamp and glue the sides. Remember, we got pocket holes underneath here. We also put two pocket holes here and two pocket holes here, so that we can, when this goes on, we can screw into this hardwood here. But we can't put them down here, or we'll be going into the panels. So what we're going to do is line this up. What I'll do is I'll line this up, dry clamp this all, screw it, make sure it all fits. Then we'll take it all apart. You can take it all apart and glue it. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, we've got our cabinet all dry clamped up now. And everything fits good. We're going to cut some corner blocks. I've cut some corner blocks. I just take whatever thickness wide you want. This is 1.5 inches. Cut some tongues, and you can line them up in all the corners like that. Okay, just like that. Put a couple up here, and we're ready to take this thing all apart now. Back out all the screws, glue all the joints, and assemble it back. And we'll have our cabinet pretty much assembled. Okay, we've got the clamps are off of our cabinet now. Everything's secure. We've got a rough finish sanding done. Now the last thing we want to do on the top here is put those corner blocks in we were talking about. And those corner blocks have a tongue and groove, just like our cabinet does. And let me show you how we're going to cut those. Since we have a 45-degree angle, let's go over to our router table and show you how we're going to cut those. Okay, first of all, we have our tongue and groove bit set up. We just exchanged. We cut a 45-degree angle right here on our corner blocks. Put it down, and we have two push blocks right here. One 45 here, one opposite here for the other side. All we do is put pressure down on that block, push it in, come follow it with that backer board. What the backer board does, it guides it, plus it prevents any chip out. Now here's where at the beginning, remember I told you we don't use a miter gauge. Even though our fence is not parallel with this miter track, we never use a miter gauge. I never use one because this backer board coming right behind here, the bearing is our guide. We don't need a miter gauge. So I'll show you how easy it works. We'll come in here and make our two cuts. Right like that. You can see right there is our cut, and there's no chip out coming right back here because we're following right there with that backer board. All right. Now we're going to do the same thing. We'll reverse the cut, do the other side, That's where our other push block comes into play. And we'll do the same exact thing on that side. That's how easy it is to cut those tongue and grooves. Now, we'll take this now, come over to here on our cabinet here. We've got 4 already cut here. Here's how we install them. What we'll do, we'll just take a little bit of glue on the top of that tongue right in there. A little bit of glue right in here. Right there. Right there. And all you have to do is, I never clamp these. I'll just set them in here like this. Give it a good snug, and right there, let it set. Do that 4 times, right like that, and your corner blocks are installed. Okay, we'll put those other corner blocks in, and the next thing we want to do now is start building the drawers. We've got 10 drawers to build. We'll start with this drawer right here, and we'll show you how we dovetail our drawers. Okay, we're ready to start cutting our drawers here now, and we always dovetail our drawers, and we always use through dovetails. And the reason I use through dovetails, it's so easy to figure the dimensioning of your drawers. If our drawer, first of all, is 4 inches high, which it is right here, we're going to cut our stock for our drawer 3 inches high, 1 inch less. Okay, the drawer sides that we use requires the drawer. They're 22-inch drawer slides, so we're going to make the drawer actual sides 21 inches, one less than the size of the drawer. So we got these here are 3 by 21. And the length of these sides is the actual length of the drawer, because it's a through dovetail. The drawer goes all the way here and stops, and the dovetails go all the way through and stop. Okay, to figure out how wide the drawer is this way, most of your inexpensive drawer slides, if your opening here is 8 inches, you make your front 7 inches. So you have a 1/2 inch clearance on each side. Like the Bloom epoxy slides we have, that's what we do. But for the nice slides that we're using for this cabinet here today, they're the Blue Motion slides made by Bloom. You'll see them later. But what that requires is to have your drawer width 7/16 of an inch less. This is 7/16 of an inch less than this total opening right here. So if this is 8 inches, all we do is subtract 7/16 of an inch, and that's how wide these are. Okay, so we have the 4 pieces for our drawer cut. Now, I'm going to show you how we're going to dovetail them right here on our router table. Okay, we've got our sides cut. We're ready to cut over here on our router table now with our dovetail jig. And this is a dovetail jig we like because it works on a router table. Okay, show you how simple it is to use. All you do is insert your sides into the top here. And what we have on top here is a gauge that you can set that dovetail anywhere you want. Okay, well, we're going to set it approximately right in here. Bring our sides down till they hit the bottom. We want to be flush here. We're going to lock it in. And we're ready to start cutting our dovetails right like that. Now, the first thing you have to do is get that dovetail set to the correct height. To do that, take a piece of stock, the same thickness as your wood, and we're going to lay it right here on our dovetail jig, right there. And what I want to do is raise that router bit up so it sticks just a little bit proud, a little bit above my stock. That way when my dovetails go together, they're going to extend just a little bit and I can sand them off. Okay, so let's take our, what we're using now is a 2 1/4 horse router. And this has that router raiser built into it. Remember like I told you earlier? So we can raise this thing from the top of the table. We're going to crank this up and you can see that bit coming up, right? So she sticks just a little bit above my stock right there. Okay? I'll lock my router in position and we're ready to start cutting those dovetails. Okay. all we do is the router sits right on the table, right like that, and and the bearing is going to follow the guides on our dovetail jig. Okay, that side's done. We're doing a pretty narrow drawer, and you always remember the inside of your drawer, okay? The insides of your drawers always go to the inside of the jig, all right? Makes it very simple to use. We'll come into here, cut the dovetails on the other side. And I don't know if you noticed right there, if that came up just a little bit right there, I didn't have that quite tight, so I think we're going to be all right. But let's just tighten that down a little tighter. And make sure, it's very important, that that stock stays right in touch with those teeth. We cleared it out just a little bit. All right. So that's the inside of our drawer. We're going to do the same thing with our other drawer side, of course. Okay. Clamp it down. Cut it. Flip it over. Inside stays to the inside of the jig. Make sure we're flush. Tighten up, and we'll make our last cuts here. Okay, we're done with the dovetail jig. Excuse me, the dovetail bit. Now, we got to change bits. We're going to stick a pattern bit in, okay, to cut the fronts and the backs. And the nice thing about our two sets of bits on this jig right here also, here's the beauty of it. We can change bits. All we have to do is pull that bit out, stick our pattern bit in on our rubber grommet, and we're automatically set to the correct height, right like that. Snug her up. Put our insert ring in. And we're ready to start cutting that quickly the fronts and the backs of the drawers on the other side of the jig now. Okay, we don't move this position of this stop. That comes over, sets, and again, we clamp. All right, now, when we do this, there's a bearing on here too. I always start on the left side over here, and I'm going to come into here on the bearing even and cut into here, come down this one, come here. And here, I don't want to come here first. I want to come out here and clean the outside so I don't get any chipping done. So if you got something that's in an open space like this, come to the outside first and clear that out, and then come on the inside. You'll watch how we do it here. Okay. Same thing again. We'll flip that over, stick her down. Make sure you're tight against the stop and tight against the bottom every time. You know, one good way to operate this thing, some people, we used to have handles on this jig, and you take the handles and you had no control. So I took the handles off, and what I like is if you grab this thing like this, you don't have much control, but if you take the palms of your hands and lay on the table, you have a lot more control of the situation. All right, so we've got those cut. This is the front of our drawer, and here's how they work. Here's how a through dovetail works. What we'll do is pull this out, and when you actually put these together, we'll cut the grooves for our bottom later. We'll show you how we do that. But all you do is put a little bit of glue on all these teeth, inside here a little bit, and we'll just hammer the two together, right like this. We'll just come into here. And you can see it makes a nice dovetail. And you got a little bit proud there that you can sand off. And we'll do that on all four sides. And before we assemble it though, we're going to cut the groove in the bottom. When we cut the groove in the bottom now, for our plywood floor here, we want to come up 1/2 of an inch from the bottom of the drawer to the start of the plywood floor, 1/2 inch there. So let's cut a 1/4 inch groove on all the bottom of all these drawers. Okay, you can see we've cut the grooves, or the dados, in the bottom for our bottoms of our drawers. And what we've done then is we've actually glued up that door. When I hammered that together, we glued up the drawer. Now, what we did on the back, we didn't put the bottom in yet. On the back of the drawer, we cut off 3/4 of an inch. And the reason why is because now we can take that drawer bottom in later and slide it in right like that. And then we can take and glue underneath here. We take and air nail that or screw it, whatever you want, and your drawer is in there. Now, why do we do that? Well, with the drawer slides we use, these Blue Motion tandem slides, you have to have the back of the drawer clearance. What we used to do is just notch out an area for each one of these slides here. But we found it's a lot easier and quicker to do it this way. And the reason you need the clearance now is because these drawers, you'll find out the slides have 2 little pins back here. We drill 2 little holes right here. Okay, those line up. Also, you can see our clips here to clip the door on. So you can take this drawer on, set it down on there, push it in. It locks in those 2 clips. Now I pull it out, full extension. And what's nice about these drawer slides, you shove them in the last 2 or 3 inches, they close very quietly. Watch, just like that. So they're very nice drawer slides, the ultimate drawer slides. So what we're going to do, we'll take this out, is we're going to show you next how we have our finished drawer here, how we're going to install these slides into the cabinet we're building. Okay, we've got our drawer here now. We're ready to set our drawer slides into our cabinet. But before we do that, we want to take our slides. We have a left hand and a right hand slide. And what we're going to do is set the slide on the bottom of the drawer there with that back. See how it recesses in there like that? And there's that little point. Right here is that little point that has to go inside the drawer we have to drill a hole for. So the way I mark that is I just take my slide onto here and I'll bring it back and I'll shove it right like that. Okay? And you can see that little point. Okay, what we have to do there is drill a small 1/4 inch hole. Right like this. Just go deep enough, don't go through the drawer. Okay? We'll do that with the left side too now, the left drawer. We'll take that and we'll mark it. And we'll drill the hole for that. Okay, now we can get rid of our drawer slides. See, now those holes will slide in there, they'll line right in there, that which holds the back of the drawer. We're ready to install the drawer slides now. And remember, when we put our partition in here, we put the groove on this side so we're flush for this drawer slide here. Okay? But on this side, we have the outside of the cabinet out here, and we're not flush, so we have to build out. So if this is an 1.5 inch face frame and we're using 3/4 here, we have 3/4 left, so we take a piece of 3/4 inch stock. I always make it about 2 inches wide, and what we're going to do is build out the side of that cabinet so we're flush for our drawer slides, right like that. Okay? Now what we do is I'll usually just line that up in there and I'll take an air gun and I'll just air nail that. And when you do it, I also glue it. And we don't want to put any glue in the areas where the raised panel is at though. Okay, we're a little bit above the raised panel, so we can put a little bit of glue here. I'll put a little strip across the top there, we'll be fine. Okay. We're going to take our air gun, nailer, stick it right in here, line it up, right flush with the top right there, and come into here and pin nail it. Okay, we've got the side rail nailed there now and glued. Now the next thing we're ready to do is install our slides. And the slides on this top rail right here, we want them right flush with that top rail and parallel. And right, if we're flush with the top here, we want to make sure, I always come in a good strong 1/8 of an inch, even 3/16 there, so that my drawer slide gets all the way in. But how are we going to get that thing screwed to the side of the cabinet and keeping it level? Well, we make a little jig, very simple. Measure from the floor up to the top of here, which is 11 inches, right here. Cut a piece of wood and just set it in there like that. And that's our little gauge. Okay, so now I can set my slide right onto there. I bring her back about 3/16. Now I'll take it and screw in the side right here into the face frame, into the back. Put about 3 screws in each drawer slide. So I'm going to screw those screws in right now. And I always just do this by hand. If you got, this is a small area, so you're going to have to use a little screw gun. You get into some bigger drawers, and you can use a screw gun, a battery operated drill. But this is you got to do this by hand right here. It takes a while. One thing I learned, I built this cabinet before, is this. If you really want to make it easy, you could install all your drawer slides, because you get down into here, you got to get on the floor and reach back in there. If you want to install all your drawer slides before you glue the back on, you could have all the screw holes set and then back all the slides out, but I find it just as easy to do it this way. So we'll continue screwing these in. Okay, our slides are both installed there now. Our drawer should be ready to go. Let's just make sure it fits. Sets up on top of our tracks right there. Slides in there. Okay, now what we got to do next is install these 2 clips in the front of the drawer. Okay? And they install right like that, side by side, right to the front. Bloom makes a little jig that you put in here and you drill the holes and it lines the holes up and everything, you know. But I don't think it's necessary to use it. I just take the 2 screws and a screwdriver, line them up in the corner, and put the 2 screws right in here like where they belong, right like that. And that's the nice thing about using soft maple as your drawer slides. A lot of guys use poplar too, but you can screw right into there just like that. Okay. So we'll install these 4 screws here now. Okay, we got those 2 clips installed now, and those 2 clips will clip onto the front of the drawer automatically. So all you do is pull your slides out, set that drawer flat on the slides, okay, and just shove the drawer front. What it does, it catches on those 2 clips right there. Now you can pull it out. That's what holds it in. Full extension, and we'll see how it works sliding with the last blue motion here. Just like that. Give her a little shove shut. And because we set it back 3/16 of an inch, our drawer front is right flush here. Okay. Now, what we got to do next is make our drawer front. And while we're making our drawer front, you know, one drawer front's the same as all of them. I'll show you how to make one drawer front. And then while we're doing it, we're also going to make a raised panel door in the middle. And like our raised panel door video, if our door opening here is 16 inches this way, we're going to make the door 17 inches, an inch bigger. If it's 12 inches here, we're going to go 13 inches here. So that's how big we make our door. And if you refer to our catalog, it tells you how to figure all the sizes of the door. But we'll get that out. We'll make our door and our drawer front on our router table, and then we'll install those 2. Okay, we're going to make that drawer front there for our cabinet right here. But before we make the drawer, let's make the door first, because that's the order you do. We're going to use our 6-piece cabinet making set here. And the order we want to use this, we want to make the door first and then the drawer, and I'll tell you why. Because the first bit we're going to use is the cope cutter to cut the copes on the ends of our rails. And that's the bit we have a jig to set to the perfect height for. Once it's set, all these bits follow automatically. If we use this bit for the drawer front first, we wouldn't know where to set it. So we know exactly where to set that bit with our jig. All right. So what we're going to do now, remember, if we want to do it easy, bring that bit all the way up, and we can just tighten up that bit just like that. Okay. Now, the thickness of the wood that we're using now is 13/16. Let's put our zero clearance ring in here. The thickness of the wood we're using is 13/16. Remember our little setup jig, our easy set? We're going to come over here to 13/16. That's our cope cutter. Well, right here is our cope set, okay? So we're going to bring that right into here, and we got to set that bit so it corresponds with our jig. Right there. Once I get it set fairly close, I can take my micro adjuster here. Use my left hand so you can see what's going on here maybe. Right there. So you can see we got that set just to the perfect height. Okay? Once that bit is set now, we're going to lock that in position. We are ready to go. Because when we make the other cut, the panel cut, this cut around our drawers, around our door edges, we don't have to change the height of the bit because these bits are all preset. Okay. So what we do next is take our straight edge on our bearing, remember? And we just pivot our fence. Fence is flush with the bearing. So simple to use this router table. Lock down and we're ready to go. Now, what we're doing is we're making that door, right? Here's our one style, here's our other style, and our two rails. We're going to cut the copes on the ends. Remember, put the good side down on all these pieces. This bit is designed to cut the copes. Now, remember what I said earlier, a lot of people like to use a miter gauge. Well, we don't, because the bearing is where all the accuracies occurs. So what we need, instead of a miter gauge, what we use is a piece of wood. This is square, just like a miter gauge. We're going to take that and push it through with that board. But to make it safer, well, you just take a push block. We got hundreds of jigs in our shop that we make with these little push blocks like this. And what we're going to do is take and make a little jig right like this. I'll just take a screw. These are face frame screws that we use in our pocket holes, and we'll just screw right into that block. Okay, and what we have now is our own miter gauge push block. It does two things. It keeps the board square, and it prevents chip out at the back of the cut. All right, so we're going to turn our router on here now and make our cuts. Okay, right there's our two cope cuts. No chip out occurring because we're coming right behind with that backer. Now, the next thing we need to do is change bits, and we're going to go with the grain. Okay, so we're going to pivot our fence out of the way, take our insert out, and remember, changing bits, very simple. Now we don't want to move the router up or down, so I'm going to take my left hand, lock the spindle lock, take that bit out, and we're going to stick the pattern bit in. That's the bit that goes with the grain. On our rubber grommet, snug it in, ready to go. That's how easy it is to make your doors. My fence comes back, drops into my pivot point, right there. And again, I take a straight edge. My bearing's on the top here. Pivot that fence, flush with the bearing, lock down my fence. Now I'm ready to go with the grain. Okay? We're also going to take our stiles and go with the grain there. What we're doing is cutting this cut, this cut, this cut, and this cut. Okay, on this now, all we're going to do is use a simple push block. So let me get my push block. Okay, here's our push block, and we're going to make our cuts, pattern cuts. Okay, right there's our two stiles. Here's our top rail. Right in here, it locks in here. And here's our bottom rail. We'll lock in right here. Okay, the only thing we have left to do now, this up here so I can see it, is make the panel to fit in the middle. Okay? To do that, that requires the next bit out of our set, and that's the raised panel bit. Okay? So let me go get the raised panel cutter. Okay, here's our raised panel cutter here now. And what we're going to do is, again, change bits again. Okay? I'm kind of showing you how, the reason we're doing this, we're kind of showing you how easy it is to operate this router table here. All we do is just pop that bit out, and we're going to stick our raised panel cutter into there, snug it up, and we're ready to go. It's already set to the right height. Now, what we're going to do also is change inserts. Remember? So we just pivot our fence out of the way, the insert drops out, and here's our raised panel insert coming in right here. Okay? Our fence drops into our pivot point, and we're ready to cut. Now, what we're going to do this time, we're not going to go, if there's the bearing, okay, if we do that, we're hogging out a very large cut. So what I'm going to do is move that ahead a little bit, and we'll take this panel cut in 2 passes. It makes it a lot safer doing it. Also, when you have a panel cutter in there, you want to slow the speed of that router down a little bit because it's a large cutter. Okay, you can see how we slowed the speed down. Now, we're going to take our panel. Again, in instructions, it tells you how to come about the size. Just put the good side down. And we also made a push block to push that through with right like that. Okay, so we'll make our panel cuts. When you do them, always go across the grain first and then finish up with the grain. So we'll go across, with the grain, across, and then with the grain finishing up. That way you don't get any chip out going across the grain. So let's come into here. Okay, that's our first cut. We're starting to get our panel cut here on the back and the front, giving us a 1/4 of an inch that's going to go into that groove. But what we want to do now is move that fence back to the bearing and make our second pass. Right there. Just pivot the fence back, lock it. This will be our second and final pass. Right there is my finished raised panel. Now, to glue that panel up, what we have, the panel, I'm covering some stuff that's in our other video, but the panel is a 1/4 of an inch narrower than your rail. And we do that on purpose because this panel has to expand and contract. Well, inside of our 2 stiles right here, and on our top rail and the bottom rail, we put these little panel line strips. I'll show you what they are. I'll get a couple of our panel line strips and show you what they are. Okay, here's our panel line strips. They're little rubber strips like this. All you do is take a pencil, insert it into that pattern cut, right like that. Just push them down there. And when I do an average door, I'll install them one here, 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 and here. And on the top rail here, here, and here, and here. Okay, we've got them installed on all of our stiles and rails here now. We're ready to glue up that door. Okay, to glue up the door now, what we're going to do is put the 2 together here. I'm going to put a little bit of glue in the back of the cope cut, a little bit on the inside here, and a little bit right there. Okay? And it goes into here. Now line it up. When you do your style, stay away. Don't get too close to this edge, because when you put these two together, you don't want any glue squirting out in that corner. If you do, you're going to have a hard time getting that glue out of there. Okay. All right. What we're going to do next is put the panel in. Okay. And a lot of guys will sand that panel ahead of time if you want, but a lot of guys also will stain it. I don't stain it. I use an oil-based stain, and that stain runs underneath there good enough for me. Okay, we're going to push that panel in right there. We're going to glue the other piece right here. Again, staying back. Don't want to get too close to that edge. If you do get some glue, and it does cord out in here, and you probably will, I still do, what works good for getting that glue out of there is white vinegar and water. Mix it up 50-50, and it does a great way of eliminating that glue. Okay, put a little bit here and here. Same thing on our style. Being careful not to put too much. The glues they got nowadays, it doesn't take much glue. Okay, got that close. All right, we're ready to stick in our clamps. Clamps, I use these old-fashioned pony clamps. I just got hung up on them. They haven't changed ever since. I've been using them for 20 years, I think. Clamp that up there. Make sure you're flush on the bottom and the top and squeeze it up. And now, a lot of guys too now, when they get that glue oozing out right there, what they'll do is take a wet rag, and I like to keep water off this. What I usually do is just take some sawdust, right like that, and rub that on all my glue right away while it's still wet. And that does a great job for me. All right, that door is made, it's clamped up. We'll let it set for a while, and we'll show you how we do the detailed edge around the outside. But while this is drying now, we're going to show you how to make this drawer front. Okay, we're ready to put our edge detailed on our drawer front. Okay, right here's our drawer front bit out of our set. Okay, we got to change bits, and again, keep the same height. All I do is pop this bit out and put our drawer front bit in, and we're already set to the right height. That's the beauty about this set. It really is. Okay. We'll take our fence, drops into our pivot point, and we pivot it so that the bearing is flush with the fence. Lock it down, we're ready to go. This bit is big enough that we can't put an insert ring in there. Okay, again, we'll take a push block now, and what we're going to do is do the end grain first, then with the grain, end grain. Finish up going with the grain. Okay, we got a little bit smaller bit now, so we can turn the speed up a little bit. Right there is our drawer front, a little coved edge with a radius. Okay, now that door we made should be dry. Let's go get that door out of the clamps, and we'll show you how to install the drawer front and the door. Okay, here's our door. It's all done now. Okay, one last thing we have to do to that door is put that detailed edge around the outside. Okay, and to do that, again, we're going to change bits. This is our drawer front. We're going to put our door front in. Okay, And that's that small OG bit right there. So again, all it is a matter of popping this bit out and dropping that bit in. Everything should automatically be set, preset for you. Pop this into here. Put our center ring in. This is a little bit smaller bit. Okay. Take our straight edge here. That's a small bit, so we're going to get rid of this zero clearance right here. And they're snug. And we're going to put this zero clearance in. Fence drops into our pivot. There's our bearing. Lock it up, and we're ready to cut. Okay. We're going to take our door and put it face side down and run it through. Again, this is the end grain, you might say, so we want to do the end grain first. And right there is how easy it is to put that outside detailed edge around the outside. All right, now we're going to show you how we install the drawer front first, and then we'll install the door second. Okay, we're ready to install our drawer front now. And before we install that drawer front, what we like to do first, I'll show you why, is put the holes in there for the hardware. We got a special little jig that does that for us. This little drawer is 5 inches tall and 8 1/4 this way. So what I'm going to do is set this back behind here on this stop right here. And I'm going to center it on my scale. So here's 6, 7, 8. Well, I'm going to go 8 1/4 right there. And you can see I'm lined up with 8 1/4 here. We're going to slide that stop in there, and that locks it in and centers it. So if I got repetitive ones, I can do the same. 5 inches this way, we got a half scale going this way. So I'm going to bring this up to 5 inches right there, lock this down. Now I'm ready to drill the holes for my hardware. I know it's centered this way and this way. And we have a 6-inch aircraft drill that comes with this to drill your holes. These are bushings. We just drill right through those bushings. Okay, pull that off, and our holes are centered just perfectly. And you can adjust these for any width handles you might have, hardware, or if you got just one in the center, you can use the center one. That comes in handy for drilling our hardware, but also it comes in handy for this. What we're going to do now, I'm going to show you how we're going to put this on. When we start putting our drawers on now, we want gravity to work with us. So what I got to do is I put a little bucket back here. We're going to tilt this cabinet back on that bucket. And when you start with this, your drawers are all installed. You start with the bottom drawer and you work up, okay? And what we do is we put a 1/2 inch overlay on all 4 sides. So if this bottom rail is 4 inches, we're going to cut a strip of wood here 3 1/2 inches, okay? Right there. We'll clamp that down. Now when we put our drawer front on there, we're ready to go. And we got 1 1/2 inches here, so we're going to take a 1-inch strip right here, right there. We know that's where that drawer is going to go. So we'll put it on, assemble it, keep going up. This is an 1.5 inch rail here, 1/2 inch overlay. We're already 1/2 inch, so we put a 1/2 inch in between, and we just keep working up and we put that drawer on. We keep working our way up until we're up to this top drawer, okay? So when we do this now, let's just get to this top drawer. Since this rail is 1.5 inches and we want a 1/2 inch overlay, we got a 1-inch strip of stock here. Okay, we're just going to put that 1-inch piece here. I think we're tight enough right there with that. Make sure we're flush right there. Okay, we know our drawer is going to go there now. We need to take another 1-inch piece on the outside right here. We're lined up right there. We're lined up just perfect there. Okay, we know that's centered. Okay, now I used to just take double stick tape on them drawers and pull them out and try to do that. But since we already have those 2 holes drilled, all we have to do is we're going to use those holes. We just take 2 screws, go right through there into our drawer, right there. Right like that. So easy to install our drawers and get them accurately done. Right like this. Okay? Pop our spacers off. Pop this up. And right there our drawer front's put on exactly where we want it. Right there. Now, we're not going to leave those. What we want to do next is open this up. Okay? And we're going to go get 2 more screws. What we're going to do with those screws is screw from the inside through here and here. Okay, here's those 2 screws we have. Okay, we're going to come in from the inside of the drawer now and screw that front on right like this. Now she's secure. Now what we can do is we can lose these 2 now, see? We're going to take those out. Now you can drill holes all the way through, put your hardware on, and then fasten it from you're connecting with the drawer front and the drawer. So install your hardware and that job is completed. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go get that door and we're going to show you how we're going to hinge our door. Okay, we're ready to install the hinges in our door, and we use the European type hinges, the 35 millimeter hinges, and we're going to install them on this side over here. And the jig that does that drills the holes for us, is a neat little jig that we have to do that. It automatically drills all 3 holes for you, just like that. What you do is you just set the jig down on here on these 2 stops, okay, and you can adjust these 2 stops for different settings. We have it setting on the number 2, which is 1/2 inch overlay, which we always use. You dial it to number 3, you got 3/8 inch overlay, and so forth. Okay, we're going to bring that down the back of our door, and I always line it up so I'm flush. This little tip of yellow is flush right there on the edge of my door. We'll clamp that down, and we're ready to drill the holes. Okay, these 2 outside holes, what we're drilling there are 2 8 millimeter holes. We'll drill them first. And you can see these are spring-loaded for us, and they're already set to the correct depth. Okay, this bit here in the middle is a little bit bigger, the 35 millimeter bit. And you can set that for whatever depth you want by adjusting these nuts. Our hinges we use, we like because they only have a 7/16 inch depth. Some of them go 1/2 inch. The shallower cup hinges are nicer because if you have a detailed edge around the outside, you don't want to have that hole come in there too deep and interfere with that detailed edge. So whenever you're doing this, it's always advantageous to take and drill on a practice piece first. You don't want to ruin a whole door by having that hinge cup come through on your detail. So do a practice door first on a piece of scrap wood. Okay, we've done that hole. We're going to come down here and you can see the holes, how nice they're positioned. We're going to do the same thing down here now on the other side. Right like that. Clamp it down, line up with the outside edge, take the 2 cam clamps, and we're ready to drill the holes. This jig right here saves me a lot of time, believe me, I tell you. It also has a center point right in here. If you're drilling a big door and you want to center it, you can put the position of the hinge and center it right there. Okay, we've got the hinges done. Now, here's the best part of it, installing the hinges. Literally, there's just no screwing or anything. All you do is position that hinge right where you want it and just a couple whacks and your hinge is installed immediately, because right here you can see there's 2 little nylon plastic inserts. They're just wedged in there. Now, the hinge is installed. You can unscrew that, stain and spray your door, and assemble it back and forth as much as you want. Those hinges, those nylon cups will never wear out, and you will never get them out. I've tried to get them out at times, and they're in there for good. All right, we're ready to install that door now. And the hinges we have here that we always use, with this face frame construction, our face frame hinges. You can see we're just set for 3/4 of an inch right there with those two clips. Okay, and remember, 1/2 inch overlay. Again, what we're going to do to help us out a little bit is take a piece of 1 inch stock, clamp it on the bottom, and that positions the door for us. Okay, we open up the hinges, and all it takes is one screw. Okay, we'll take our screw and set that hinge right like that. And that easily, your door is installed. Okay? Perfectly centered. Now, what's nice about these hinges, they have adjustments on them, screws. You can adjust that hinge if you have two doors meeting. With one screw, we'll move the door in and out, and the other screw will move the door, if you have some long ones, tip them in and out this way. And you can also move the door up and down with the screws you just put in. Okay, the last thing I want to show you now, we have our door done, we have all our drawers done, basically our cabinet is done. We're going to go back to our finished cabinet now and show you a few things to wrap this job up. Okay, one other thing we're going to add to this door here before we finish up is a new thing from Bloom. It's a door closer, door silencer, and it sits right in here like this. You've seen doors. They used to put the old-fashioned bumpers on here to silence them, and, it's annoying. These things are nice. We're going to put that in your door. The closer you put this to the hinge side, the faster your door is going to close. You get it out in here, it will take forever for that door to close. But I always like to put it about 1 inch or 1.5 inches away from the edge, from the hinge side. So let's take I take the screw that comes with it and throw it away, and I use the old trusty square drive screw instead. But we're going to put that right here. Okay, it's installed. There's a little lip behind the face frame. Now, when your door closes, nice. So that's just a nice added touch that you could put on all your doors, even in any type of cabinet. Okay, we're ready. Our cabinet is done. We got all of our drawers done, our door, let's say. The last thing, remember at the beginning, we showed you how to make this sub base for our router. The instructions on how the size of this right here and how to drill the holes and everything are all in your instructions here. And what's nice about that is these 4 center holes line up with these 2 braces we put in here, see? So now when you put this tabletop down with the router table on it, you can run the bolts that are underneath there. You might want to get some longer bolts depending on the thickness of your stock you're using here, but to get through there. And those 4 bolts will run down through there. And you can if you want to get wing nuts, if you want to take it off, there's regular nuts that come with it. You can tighten it down, but with wing nuts, you can unscrew it, take this top off. You can take it to a job site if you wanted to, or bring it back and forth however many times you want. But what we did here, and we used plywood in here, but outside we edge banded it with a piece of oak because we want it to look nice. When the top's on here, we want that looking nice, right, like that. So let me show you how easy it is to make. We tongue and groove this on here. Let me show you how we're going to tongue and groove this edge banding onto that plywood. Okay, here's our plywood top, and in the instructions it tells you how big to make that piece of plywood. You have 2 pieces of hardwood that are going to be on the outside, and those 2 pieces on the outside here, you want them the exact same length as the width of your plywood. Okay, the pieces going this way now, we'll cut those out. We'll make them a little bit extra long. Okay, so what we're going to do is we got the groove cutter, the tongue and groove cutter. The groove cutter we're going to put into our router. We're going to cut grooves in the center of all of our edge banding. And remember, keep the good side down. Okay, we've got all of our grooves cut, and make sure that you keep the good side up. Don't get those mixed up. Put an X on the top. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change bits and put the tongue cutter in. Again, after building this cabinet, you know how easy this is to do. We'll just come into here, pop this bit out, bring the tongue cutter in, and we're ready to go. There's our ring locked in. Okay. Fence drops into my pivot. There's my straight edge on my bearing. And we're ready to start cutting. Now what we're going to do is cut the tongue on our plywood. Put the good side down, and we'll cut that. Okay, right there's our good side. Now, all we have left to do is take our edge banding. Okay, you can see this is the top side, how we're nice and flush right there. What we want to do is line this up, front and back. And what I do first is I'll clamp these two edges on first. Clamp this on after that's dry. Come in here and clamp this on out here. Then you can take and size after that's all clamped up. You can take and cut that to the exact size. I always make these a little bit wider than what they're supposed to be. I cut it to the exact 27 inches by 31 and a half. I believe that's what the dimensions are in the catalog. So that's how easy it is to make that top. Then lay out all your holes, drill the hole for here, and you're all set now to plop this down, put on your cabinet, and install your router table. Okay, after you get your top made and your holes are all drilled, you can see where we drilled the holes in the top of the table. This is we took the top off the one we were demonstrating with all day to show you here, but those 4 holes will correspond with these 4 holes right here, and that way your router table will come right down on top just where it has to be. So another thing, if you want to, instead of, we installed a remote control on-off switch on the outside right here, and you can run the power cord through the back of the drawers. You get in there, makes it a lot handier working that thing from the outside remote than it does underneath here. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to install that router table top and show you how it's installed on top of this sub base right here, and we'll come over here and we'll show you how it goes on top. Okay, here's our top, and you can see how we bolted this to our sub base right here on these here. And here we got a little bit longer bolts because they got to come. Remember those bolts we did at the very beginning? We slid in those tracks. We put longer ones in there because we want to come through these 4 corner blocks here, these braces right here, and then bolt it from underneath the cabinet. So all we have to do is line this up here, and those bolts aren't going to move. You can trust where they're going to go. There, the 4 bolts are down underneath there. Now you can take some washers, run underneath there and lock that down, and you're in business. So that's the completion of our building of our router table cabinet and our router table top and fence. That is one way you can do it with the cabinet. The other place you can use this is, like we said in the beginning, you can install this whole router table into the table side of your table saw. And we'll give you an example of what that looks like here next. Okay, another way of using our router table, since we designed it 27 inches wide, and most table saws are 27 inches deep, you can set this on the table board side of your table saw. And it works great because you have your pivot pin right here, and you can swing it this way like this, and you can push stock through, and you have a nice long outfeed table right there. If you didn't want to do that, another thing you could do is take this bolt off right here, lift up your table, slide this bolt out right here. That way our fence comes off, and if you got some short stuff to do, you can use a T-square fence on your table saw and use that in conjunction with the router table. Either way. So the way we did that at the very beginning, remember when we made that sub base? We made that sub base with a 3-inch wide rail all the way around. That way you can install it in your table saw. To do that, every table saw is different. You might have to re-drill some holes in this piece of angle iron here and bolt it down a little bit lower. The holes might not line up for you perfectly, but I'm sure you can retrofit it to fit your table saw. Some table saws nowadays are coming out where they're 28 inches deep. Some I've even seen are 30 inches deep. If that's the case, you make your sub base 28 inches, put your router table on that 28-inch wide sub base, and then you can always put a little 1/2-inch filler strip on each side. And that'll work fine for you there too. But this is just another way for you people that are cut short on space to use your router table with your table saw. Okay, you can see we used a lot of tools here today, and whether you put your router table in a table saw and use it like that, or you use your router table and build a cabinet for it like that, or maybe you want to build a cabinet that fits underneath your table saw here, make this cabinet shorter and wider, you can use this table in a variety of different ways. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Just as I enjoyed working with you today, and I hope you enjoy using your router table.